To the extent that we can find anybody who was involved in the breaking of American law and who has put at risk the assets and the people that I have described, they will be held responsible. They will be held accountable.
And there's our Attorney General Eric Holder talking WikiLeaks. John Carl, it keeps getting messier and messier.
It sure does, but the good news is Top Line starts right now.
And welcome everyone to Top Line. I'm Amy Walter.
And I'm Jonathan Carl.
Every day, right here at noon, we bring you the latest, the greatest unscripted political news. John Carl, what do you have for us this morning?
No place to start but with the wiki mess. And about the only saving grace here politically is that this happened after the election. But put aside the national security implications, let's look at the political impact, Amy. And to me, the one that really stands out here is the notion that the administration was playing let's make a deal to try to get prisoners out of Guantanamo Bay so the president could fulfill his promise. And the one that I just love is the revelation in here that Slovenia was told, the country of Slovenia was told, if you want to get a meeting with President Obama, take a prisoner.
Right, so it is a nice little trade, but no money exchanging hands. My personal favorite was to Belgium, saying you can now raise your stature.
You'll be
as
the leader
real,
of Europe.
right,
take a couple prisoners
just by bringing Chinese prisoners. I don't know if
that's
that really
great
works
stuff.
that well, but good times. All right, second top line up here: stiff upper lip. Although we did learn that it wasn't actually his upper lip, it was his lower lip, which got the stitches in it, but it's very important distinction. But will a banged up President Obama be able to throw some elbows of his own? We know that there's a bipartisan meeting on Tuesday with the leadership. Is this a chance for the two to actually work something out, or, as we expect probably, John Carl, we don't see anything substantive coming from this, but will the tone be set?
Oh, I'm sure it'll be wonderful. But I do have some information on this. You recall that when this meeting was first talked about, the president first invited the congressional leadership up. This was going to be a long meeting. There was even talk of a Slurpee summit.
And dinner.
This was supposed to go into dinner. Now I'm told that this meeting is scheduled from 10:30 to 11:30 in the morning, and that is it. Dinner will have to wait.
Oh, do they get snacks?
I don't know if they're going to serve anything. They do have good food over there at the White House. Next thing up, Rangel's plea. Charlie Rangel, of course, the House Ethics Committee recommending censure for his long list of alleged misdeeds. That now goes to the full House to vote on, and Rangel is now urging his colleagues to please just give him a reprimand, not a censure. And this may sound just like words, Amy, but there is a real difference here. If Rangel is censured, what happens is that the Speaker of the House actually has to read the rap sheet against him from the floor of the House right to Rangel, who must stand there in the well while it is read. It's a pretty severe form of wrist flapping by congressional standards. A reprimand would be, simply a vote saying Rangel did some bad things.
Right, and what incentive does Nancy Pelosi have to read that list?
Not
so much.
The amazing thing is, he could have had this deal a long time ago if he had agreed to it a long time ago.
But that's always the story. All right, and finally, all over but the counting, Minnesota, once again, the land of 10,000 recounts, still waiting on our official count for who the next governor will be. The recount starts today. The hope is that it will all be done by the 7th, and the new governor will be awarded on December 14th. There's a lot of talk, of course, about this could be a Coleman Franken redux.
It's the way they do things in Minnesota.
It's apparently the way they do things. Although, remember, that was like 200 votes or something in the Senate race. This is an almost 9,000 vote difference between Democrat Mark Dayton and Republican Tom Emmer. It looks like Dayton will be successful. More important, even Norm Coleman coming out and saying to his Republican friend, time's up, maybe time to pack it in.
Meanwhile, our friend Joe Miller's not packing in yet either,
no,
up
he's
in
not.
Alaska.
The top line bounce. All right, joining us, it's a perfect lead-in talking about bipartisan. Yes, the segue into Dan Glickman, our guest today. He's currently a senior fellow at the Bipartisan Policy Center, member of Congress from Kansas, and most recently, the head of the MPAA, which there was a nice little story in the New York Times about that. Let's actually...
And also somebody who was once the future president of the United States. I mean, I remember you on at least one occasion being the member of the cabinet as the Agriculture
Yes, I'm
Secretary,
sorry.
who was
Forgot
not
about that.
present for a State of the Union address.
Forgot about that.
I was
So-
almost
You were-
there.
you were almost there.
I was practicing.
You're
Good work.
almost there.
Yeah.
Yes, can't leave that part
Yes.
of the bio. Let's talk about it, not quite as not in the Bipartisan Policy Center quite yet, but the MPAA job, considered one of the more glamorous here in Washington. You held that position. The story in the New York Times today saying it's been very difficult to replace you. Do you have a favorite in this?
Well, by the way, we're open to the job.
Yeah,
I mean, it's,
actually, I think you should both apply.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they're maybe looking for somebody in the communications business,
I've seen
and you
movies.
both have star qualities.
There we go.
You know, the truth is, this is a very important job because the film industry and the television industry, entertainment is probably the single biggest export of the United States, and so they've had a tough time filling the job. I left about almost a year ago, but I hope they get it filled quickly because in Washington, you know, you can be out of sight, out of mind fairly quickly. And this is too important of an industry for America and for our economy not to have the job filled.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I want to get to the question of bipartisanship, which seems like you're in a challenging role right now, given the trends on the Hill. What was your sense? You know, the Democrats have opted in the House to stick with Nancy Pelosi, and they've also signaled very clearly that they're up for a real fight with Republicans in this lame duck over taxes. I mean, was there a message received in this election, or are we headed to maybe even more of a partisan gridlock?
I'm actually somewhat optimistic. First of all, I think with split government, and my experience was I was in the administration with the split government, at least for a while in the Clinton administration. Things tend to work a little better when you have one party in at least one part of our government and another party in at least another part of our government. So, you know, the public has spoken. They don't want the nonsense of bickering and war that take place on every issue, from the debt and deficit to food safety to health care and education. And so, you know, my judgment is that I think things will calm down a bit. I still think that we're in for a couple years of serious partisan differences, but I think the public is not going to tolerate bickering and hyper-partisanship. And so I'm hopeful, and maybe I'm Pollyannish, but I think things will get a little bit better.
Well, how does the public, though, express that? I mean, what we've seen is there are expressions of frustration in 2006 and 08 and now 2010 were to throw a lot of people out of office, many of whom were moderates, the kinds of people who sit in districts where they have to be conscious of reaching across party lines. So is the system itself the problem?
Well, certainly the primaries tend to produce members on both parties who are more at the extremes. The Democrats tend to produce more people on the left, the Republicans on the right. It is a shame that in this election half the blue dogs were defeated. That is the Democrats who were moderates. And you know, and if you look back, it's often the moderates on at least the Democratic side are lost, and there aren't very many moderates on the Republican side, you know, anymore. And so the public is saying they want certain problems resolved. The big one is the economy and jobs. And I think that the members of Congress who don't listen to that message are going to find either two things will happen. One is there will be huge defeats again in the next congressional elections, or there could be a much more serious independent party movement in this country, which we have not had to date, but it could happen if there's constant bickering and not serious resolution of at least the jobs and the economic situation.
Well, look to the tax cut debate. What would you be advising your former Democratic colleagues on the Hill?
You know, I don't know. It's gotten so late. You would have, from a political perspective, I would have liked to have seen the president have a stronger message in terms of a value system, what he supports for, and he's come out for some of that. But given the election, my guess is they'll probably punt this for a while, a year or two. I think the more serious problem is the deficit and debt reduction issues, which are longer term, much more malignant to our American political and economic system. And on the one hand, you see that if we extend all the tax cuts for very much longer, it really hurts our deficit reduction factor. But practically speaking, that's the most pressing problem America faces right now. We're going to get to the point where we're going to spend more on interest on the debt than we're going to spend on defense. That's going to happen by the year 2020.
Incredible.
And it's just incredible. We're going to spend more on paying interest on the debt than we raise in income taxes in this country. You know, so it doesn't make any sense that we can't begin to come together on that issue.
Well, you've worked with a whole lot of different folks in your lifetime. You've worked as members of Congress. You've worked and had to talk to real constituents. both sides now saying, we think that the American public is ready for the kinds of sacrifices needed to get the deficit under control. And yet, you know, the reality of politics too, which is saying that is one thing, doing it is another. Do you think that the public is truly ready for the kinds of stuff that needs to happen?
And they need leadership to put them in this position. The truth of the matter is, you can deal with this deficit without doing serious damage to anybody in this country. Yes, it will require some sacrifice by the wealthy, by people who have entitlement programs and Medicare and Social Security. Hopefully you'll leave the people to the bottom end somewhat harmless with freezing spending, doing the kinds of things that everybody thinks need to be done. Even in my own area, farm programs. I think farm programs can be cut without hurting farmers very much. The question is there the leadership to push this issue along? And it reminds me, you know, 47 years ago, John Kennedy said, ask not what you can do for your country, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. This is an issue of patriotism. This country is facing serious calamity if we don't deal with this problem over the longer term. But the public has not yet been told this story very effectively.
You're talking about the president. The
President and
Yeah,
Congress
he is.
and business leaders. You know,
not.
I mean, everybody's got a stake in this game. And clergy. I mean, role models, validators. Yeah, the president is the prime leader in this area, but he's not
he
the
hasn't
only
led.
leader.
He hasn't led on this.
Look. He has a myriad of problems to deal with. He has to take this issue and make it the #1 issue. But so do other people in our society as well.
All right. Well, we are out of time, but thank you very much, Congressman Dan Glickman. It's always
Thank
good to
you.
have you here on Top Line.